Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights, Dueling question episode with Iowa Dave Schwartz. Thanks sponsors, Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, Heritage Auctions, Hugs the Scott Auctions, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Burbank Sports Cards, ComC.com, and Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication. So here it is. Welcome, Dave Schwartz, Iowa Dave from the shallow end. Been a faithful listener of your podcast. Delighted to have you as my guest to do some dueling questions. Dave, welcome to the show and hit me with your best shot.
Dr. Beckett, thank you for inviting me on. First one, you've talked before that you have a PhD in statistics and how that helped you with the business. But before you launched Beckett Media and the magazines and everything, and your card involvement was more as a dealer, and you were in Ohio and traveling through Michigan and Ohio and buying and selling and trading. At that point, how did your background in statistics help you understand cards? Not the business, but how did it help you understand sports cards?
Well, I understood sports cards in the neighborhood when I was a kid, but I was always a numbers guy. So I was always trying to make sense. I'm words and numbers, but I certainly had an affinity for numbers from an early age. Got into the national aspect of the hobby. Once I got into my 20s and I was in college, I made contact with another collector here in the area. And in grad school, I hit it really hard and got very involved in the hobby. So that was my coming out into the national scene. I was a PhD student at the time. I had not finished my degree. Grad school's intense, and this was a fabulous pastime for me to just get away from my studies occasionally. I wasn't hitting as hard as I did later on, but I really cut my teeth, was one of the founders of the card collecting club and the first trade show convention that was in the Dallas area back in the early 70s. I got my PhD in 75, and then my first job was at Bowling Green State University as a professor in the statistics department there. That moved me from Dallas, where I'd been at SMU, which was not the mainstream of the hobby as it is now, to Northwest Ohio, close to Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, right in the middle of all those great baseball cities. And I couldn't have picked a better place. Then I really went into hyperspeed. And that's when I was able to kick off my price surveys, and that turned into the annual books, which then at some point after I got tenure, I moved back down to Dallas and started the magazines down here in Dallas. So the magazines were always a Dallas thing, but the books really got kicking in Ohio. And I was in the right place at the right time, Dave.
With you understanding the machinations of statistics, how did your understanding of how statistics work help you understand the business of sports card dealing, selling, trading?
I understood that because I was one. I had been a major collector, major dealer, was hitting all the shows. I knew all the players in the industry. And so I had inside knowledge. I was the guy that many people came to say, hey, what's this worth? It was before I did any price guides or price surveys. I had a good memory and I had a good understanding of supply and demand. It was natural, but very challenging to expand that platform to have the audacity to think I'm going to do a book that's going to purport to track every card, not in every condition, but really be a comprehensive price guide. And so my training said, I know I can do this. I know it's going to be hard. It's not an exact science, but as much as possible, I had my own knowledge of empirical data, and I had some data gathering edges back in the day because of relationships. And Dave, my first major contribution to this industry is probably the very first price guide. When you're creating something out of nothing, there was really almost nothing there. The checklists were there, and even those were imperfect. But going through and pricing every card, once that was done, everything else was an update. And yes, my training, it wasn't like it was higher statistics with lots of equations as much as just an understanding of outliers, of different ways to cut through a large data set. Okay, you had a very interesting episode where you were saying, I think you called it the breaking casino, that breaking, it's not a scheme, but there's something going on there that breakers really are assured of making money as long as they come up with enough breakees, people that are going to be not chumps, but that are going to sign up. And the card companies don't look the other way. They say, go get them. You're selling more product. This actually has become a preferred way for them to move product, especially higher end product. Unfortunately, the casino aspects, unlabeled, I really respect what you said, is that the words you use matter, that you're entering into a breaking virtual casino. And just like in a Las Vegas casino, in roulette or any other game, your expectation should be to lose. On average, you will lose. But that doesn't mean people realize they should lose. But if they knew, like on the pack of cigarettes, that this can be addictive, that if you enter into a break, that there's warnings that you are not expected to get a financial return. If you're putting in $100, your expected value is 75 or 50 or whatever it is. And frankly, that number, it can't be known exactly. And the problem the card companies have, their safety valve, is that some of the outrageous huge hits now have been so bid up that it distorts the expectation. At any rate, I wanted to give my listeners a chance to hear your take on this breaking casino, because I think you're really onto something. I think we could bat around what the remedies are, but you've had some interesting guests, but you also had your own essay about it. So give us some perspective of what's the situation and what can be done.
Sure, these online breaking casinos. Not saying that this should go away. I'm not saying that any industry should go away, but there are certain industries that prey on certain types of personalities, certain types of people with certain chemical makeups where they can't necessarily control themselves. There are state gaming commissions that oversee online gambling, whether it's something like poker or sports betting or whatever it happens to be. And they're, for the most part, very effective at what they do. But nothing like that exists for Whatnot, for Fanatics Live. There's nothing there. There are very few, if at all, guardrails up in that industry, which clearly is gambling and is an online casino. And so the essay that I wrote, it was just a bit of a plea for people to the terminology for these things, since we know it's not going to go away. There's too much money involved that helps the card manufacturing companies, that helps the breaking companies, but to call it what it is and to regulate it for what it is. And then at that point, the people who are involved, who are out of control, who are spending too much, who can't stop, there at least will be a few extra devices in place potentially for them to get help, to help themselves. But to pretend continually that breaking is just some fun part of the hobby, like wandering over to 7-Eleven and buying a pack of baseball cards, is disingenuous at best and a lie at worst.
Well, you can't deny that it's enjoyable.
Sure.
But what we can say almost unequivocally is it is a losing financial proposition on average. And when you tell them that, they say, yeah, but I'm really enjoying this. And I know a guy that had a big hit. I know it's possible to win. Yes, it's possible to win, but the more you play, the more you will lose. That's the law of large numbers. I hesitate to say that everybody, all of our listeners, all of our friends, all the hobbyists ought to take an elementary probability and statistics course, which I used to teach. But basically, it's a bad deal. It's a bad deal unless you consider the enjoyment. But Las Vegas is a bad deal unless you consider the enjoyment.
You have to be aware that it's entertainment, and the casinos would not exist, breaking companies would not exist if they were not making money. It is by
In fact, they're guaranteed to make money.
Yes, there's so much that you are going to lose. And so you have a buddy who got a big hit. Great. You might watch something like If Sports Weekly on YouTube where they have the top 10 hits of the week. And I watch it and I'm entertained. But some people see that and not saying that people need to be coddled, not saying that people have to have their hand held at all the time. But I'm saying that breaking is a game of chance. It is not a game of skill at all. It's a game of chance and should be regulated as such. And then if it exists and people get involved, fantastic, great, break away. But there are no safeguards there.
The safeguard is you're going to run out of money. You're going to run out of borrowed money. You're going to run out of family. And you're going to have a problem. But the four components of breaking, to me, the most exciting thing is the lottery aspect, that you might win the lottery. You might get this great card. And so for $100 break, there's a component of your $100 went to maybe getting the case hit. The second component of value is just the aspect of, I'm going to get some cards. Generally, you get some cards, and they're going to be worth $25 or something. Not going to be worth a lot, but my base value, if I don't get the big hit, I'm going to get some cards. Again, that's generally that's minimal. Okay. Next, it is fun to open a pack, whether somebody's opening it for you, you're watching them, or you're doing it yourself. But the fourth thing is what has been insidious, Dave, and that is the vicarious group experience of being part of a break and knowing that somebody won and it wasn't me this time. And that's why breaking is different than opening your own box in a solitary way. The rush of your buddy, I would have been next. Okay. But it's a foolish proposition. These almosts, you add them all up, it's a bad financial deal to try to make money participating in breaks unless you're the breaker.
And that's the only way. If you're on that side of the breaking table, that is the only time that you are guaranteed.
No, there's another way. The other way to make money on breaking is coming up and cleaning up the spoils. After the break is done, there are 9 out of 10 people that are disappointed. And some of the breakers have figured this out. We're going to cash them out so they can re-up and get into the next break. But there are people that will take all the commons, or they'll take all the box hits that aren't the case hits, things like that. So there's an ecosystem. Breaking has become efficient. It's just a losing proposition for the initial. It's like the person that drives the car off the lot when they buy a new car. Okay. You've immediately lost money, but you got a great ride. Now, the next person that buys the car, when you just drove it off the lot, is going to pay 30% less. There's certain used cars, you can drive them for a while and sell them for what you paid for them. But a brand new, sparkly, shiny break, as soon as it's opened, you lost money, except in that very rare instance that you were the one that got the case hit. And so it becomes non-statistical, it becomes emotional.
It becomes dangerous when you start making decisions based on hope and wishes, right? Or jealousy or temptation. That's when it happens.
I looked up the 10 top addictions, and something really fascinating happened is that gambling doesn't come up till number 5. It starts with nicotine and alcohol, drugs, caffeine. Alcohol can be really bad. That's the one people think of. But what comes after that in the top 10, after gambling, is internet and social media. 7 is food. Let's knock that one out for just a minute. 8 is shopping. 9 is work. 10 is video games or gamification. 5 of the bottom 6 are related to our hobby. So gambling is exacerbated by the social media aspect, the work aspect. Hey, family, I'm doing this. My ship's going to come in anytime and all that stuff. It's their dream, but it's based on a chance and a poor chance at that.
You talk about the internet, that's where breaking takes place. Social media is where it gets advertised, right? It's the gamification.
It's a compound addiction. Now we're dealing not with a gambling addiction alone. It's a compound addiction, which makes it even more insidious. Yes. And it seems so benign. These are baseball cards or football cards, soccer cards, whatever. The card companies won't like it. The breakers won't like it. But the rank and file collectors need to know this is not a good deal. Parimutuel, in the sense that the state rakes off their cut immediately, and then what is distributed is less than the whole pie.
When was the last time you bought a single card, not a stack from discount boxes or a lot of cards from ComC, but when was the last time you saw a single card and thought, I need that or I want that, and then bought or acquired that card?
The last thing I remember buying from a showcase was probably about 10 years ago. It was like a partial set of something from SMU that I'd never seen before. And that's the only thing I think I bought other than buying in an auction or buying in a dollar box at a show. That's my lane, Dave. I already have a lot of great cards. And if I had less cards, I'd have more room to display the great cards I already have. So I don't know if that makes me to be pitied or wow, such self-restraint, but it's not my lane anymore. I'm looking in the dollar boxes for things I haven't seen. When I'm just perusing showcases, it's more for interest. And it's rare that I say, hey, how much for that? And for most things, I really can't afford it, but I'm just choosing not to hobby that way. I'm not completing sets anymore. Most of the sets I had, I sold in order to fund the company from a long time ago, because I wanted to divest so that I could be unbiased in my price guide research. Now, I still kept a good sampling of cards, but nothing exhaustive like I used to have. I don't know if that disappoints you, Dave, but
Oh no.
you know,
I was just curious because I love your dives into discount boxes, and I've started doing that over the last year or so as well, just finding them so fascinating.
what is the equivalent in the hobby of the person that goes into the bar and has a couple of drinks and then another one, and the bartender says, I'm not going to serve you another drink? Is that what you're looking for in the hobby, in the online breaking casino? Because we don't know if that person is independently wealthy. We probably know that they put their money up, their credit card went through, but what should we expect from your vantage point?
Keeping with your bar analogy, and talking with Alex Efron, who does Collectors MD, forget before they even get up to the bar, and instead let's start with the bouncer at the door. Before you even get into the bar to request the drink in the first place, the bouncer is going to be checking IDs. I know some breaking companies will do that. They will check for ages, but not all do. This is why, as you said before, it's not going to happen because this has to be some self-regulation. But it's going to be up to, if a state gambling agency is not going to get involved, then what we're doing is we are effectively asking the online breaking casinos to do it themselves, in which there's going to be a maximum that you can put in, saying you may enter X amount of breaks per cycle, per week, whatever the cycle happens to be. Are they going to do that? I highly doubt it.
No, that's going to make them want it even more. It's the insidious nature of collecting. If you tell me I can't have it, then I want it. If you raise the price, I want it more. If you tell them, hey, this is age restricted, they say, this must be really good.
Sure. I was in college. I enjoyed drinking beer at age 19 and 20 more than I did at 21 and 22. There was something fun about it and rebellious about it. Once I could do it on my own, I was like, I don't want to do it tonight. Let's just watch a movie. But just because it's going to be more tempting doesn't mean that those regulations are ineffective. They're still effective. Otherwise, you'd see a lot more underage people in bars or buying cigarettes or whatever. So that is one step of it. I wish I had a good answer. And why would they? But until the OBCs are willing to do it themselves, it's just not going to get better. But it's going to have to come from the people that are getting the money. For them realizing they're still going to make lots of money, even with some of these fail safes in place.
The bigger problem to me and regulation would be here in a hurry if the gambling was rigged. I don't mean rigged, they're not being fully transparent. But if you really did the math, you'd see they're not returning 100 cents on the dollar, but they're not cheating. They're just not telling you the whole story. They're not scanning the cases and pulling out the very best card. If they would, yes, that'd be jail time or regulation in a heartbeat. But mostly it's just people being unknowledgeable about the true odds.
Some casinos, they will have the odds posted for some games, but that's regulated and breaking is not. Yeah.
Have you noticed that Panini and Topps do their odds differently on the backs of the packs?
Yeah, Topps appears to be much more transparent about it than Panini does.
They're actually doing odds, whereas Panini is just telling you how many. And some could think that means Panini sure is printing an awful lot of cards because it's harder to reverse engineer the math. You still can do it. In fact, a lot of the guys that went to work for Panini and Topps used to work for us when we would do those things, when we were trying to get a handle on the relative scarcities of the products back in the 90s and the 2000s, because they don't want you to know everything, but they want you to know enough that, hey, this is tough. If you get it, it's going to be great. But your chances of getting it are very slim. But you're saying there's a chance. That's the problem. And they know somebody that won.
So you know it can happen, right?
It's not cheating. It's just a bad bet.
And the mindset is, how long can my bad luck continue? It can't always be this bad. At some point, I'm going to hit. That's what the thought process is.
I know, but past behavior is the best indicator of future results as well. I have a rule when I play golf, and some guys will say, let's play this betting game. Whoever sets up the game, whoever keeps score, wins. They figured out a way that they win. They're not cheating. It's just that they figured out a way that this counts, but this doesn't. And it's all above board. But I didn't know the finer points. If people knew the finer points of the online breaking casino, they'd say, you know what? I better be getting a lot of enjoyment out of this and really enjoying being with my friends. And yeah, one of my buddies is going to win. It's probably not going to be. In fact, this is an entertainment budget for me. It's not an investment budget.